Well, at the local auto parts store, Fisher's Auto Parts, came through. They had these seals in stock. I just gave them the dimensions and they found the right seals. They're less than 10 bucks. So fantastic. Let's pop these in, recharge the AC again, and the final piece of the puzzle on this Cadillac is that check engine light that decided to come on, go off, come on, go off. Something to do with the ignition system. Alright, with a long pick and some wobble extensions, I slipped the new seals in there. Now we're going to tighten down the main bolt. Charge it up, sniff around, make sure no more leaks of this compressor. Okay, so the last step in the diagnosis of this 93 Cadillac Allante is the P023 trouble code ignition system. Well, let's look it up in the OE repair manual. There's a lot of good information in there. And then we'll need a multi-channel oscilloscope, take this thing on a test drive, and see what happens when the check engine light starts coming on. Alright, here's the big book. Diagnostic trouble code P023. So I'm using this because this has way more information than all data. And we want as much information as possible to hopefully have a successful diagnosis here. So let's read. Circuit description. For complete description how ignition spark is controlled by the PCM and the ignition control module, refer to section 6D4. We'll take a look at that. So P023 will set under either of two following conditions. Let's read. 1. 4x reference pulses are being received by the PCM and the bypass line is low. And the PCM detects pulses on the ignition control line. This could be caused by the bypass line shorted to voltage or a faulty ignition control module. So basically the PCM is commanding the line low. Now it's important to see, which unit here, the PCM or the ICM, is pulling which circuit up or down. We'll cover that in just a little bit. Second condition is 4x reference pulses are being received by the PCM and the bypass line is high. The PCM does not detect a signal on the ignition control line. This could be caused by an open or shorted to ground ignition control line or bypass line open or shorted to ground. Okay, so they're talking about this ignition control line and the bypass control line. Test condition number 1 is crank. P035 is not set. Bypass line is low. At least 2 4x reference pulses have been received. Test number 2 failed previously this ignition cycle. Test condition number 2 is run. Bypass line is high. And then failure condition number 1 in crank, ignition control plus is detected when it's in bypass mode. And failure condition number 2 is no ignition control pulse is detected on circuit 423 when it's in regular computer controlled mode. Okay, action taken. PCM turns on the check engine light. So you would think once it sets the code it should keep that light on, but that's not what we saw. PCM controlled spark is disabled for that ignition cycle. Well, it didn't seem to run any worse. Transaxle shifts adapts are maintained at current levels. And then there's the whole fault tree. So we don't necessarily need to look at all these steps. It's basically kind of dumbed down. If you don't really understand the circuit, you go step by step and hopefully you'll find the problem. But they do give you little hints like 1 or 3, 4. Like 4 here refers to this section of the trouble tree, and they're actually explaining, checking to see if there's an open circuit 423 that is causing no ignition control pulses to reach the ignition control module, or if pulses are reaching the ignition control module and it is doing nothing with them. Okay, so next let's take a look at the actual description and operation of this ignition control system. Alright, here we go. So ignition system, general description. So it's a waste spark system, no moving parts. It consists of 2 crankshaft position sensors, crankshaft reluctant ring, camshaft position sensor, ignition control module, 4 separate ignition coils, 8 spark plugs, knock sensor, and the PCM. Here's a nice detailed kind of a layout. So we have 2 crank sensors, and you can see this is kind of a interesting reluctor pattern. And then there's a cam sensor, and then the ICM processes those signals and sends them to the PCM, and then the PCM says, okay, we'll shift from start mode to bypass mode, and then the EST wire, the ignition control wire, actually adjusts the spark timing. So here we have exploded view of the actual crank sensors. So these are hollow or variable reluctance type, just 2 wires, and you get something like this. So it has 24 evenly spaced notches plus 8 additional notches shaded, used for synchronization. As the crankshaft rotates, the notches pass a position sensor to create a voltage pulse signal. Input to the ICM. So the 2 sensors see the same signal, but they're 27 degrees apart. So one signal is going to be delayed with respect to the other one. So that's how it gets the synchronization. This counts the number of B pulses. This is all details, but still interesting. And when it sees 0 B pulses between A pulses, it starts counting the B pulses. When it counts 4, synchronize the ignition event. So you can start within 180 degrees, or half an engine revolution. And the cam sensor provides the ICM with cylinder number 1 firing order information, which the PCM uses for the fuel injection. Okay? Using 3 sensors allows the ICM to maintain ignition synchronization even if one of the sensors becomes faulty. Now we have very nice, almost like oscilloscope waveforms. They don't give you the actual voltages here, but you can look down here and see what the range is. So bypass mode, you see the PCM pulls that up, and then the ICM uses F, the ignition control pulses now, to adjust the ignition timing. And there are the 2 crank sensor pulses. So in one revolution here, so this is 360 plus 360. So in here, there should be 32 pulses, and they're offset by 27 degrees. So pretty advanced for 1993. Now let's see what we want to actually check with the oscilloscope to determine what's setting this trouble code. So now that we know how this ignition system works, let's see what can possibly set this code. What do we want to measure with the oscilloscope on our test track? So channel 1, I want to put on this 4x reference high wire, right? We're going to do all the measurements at the PCM, and which wires are pull up or pull down. So the bypass wire, that should be pull up by the PCM when the RPMs exceed 500, and then the ignition control is also pull up by the PCM going to the ignition control module. This reference low wire is basically a ground reference between the PCM and the ICM, and there are you can read more details about that. I'm not worried about that. It's not setting this P035 code, which would mean the ground reference is out of range. So pull up, and then this 4x reference high is pull up by the ICM going to the PCM, okay? After it processes the raw signals from the crank sensors and the cam sensor. So 3 channels, channel 1, channel 2, and channel 3. Let's go to the PCM, hook those up, fire it up, and see what happens. Alright, so first let's take a look at the components under the hood so we're familiar. So obviously this is the ignition control module with the 4 waste spark coils right there. And this little connector is the cam sensor input, and this connector is the two crank sensors, the raw data from the sensors. You see the cam sensor is on the rear bank, kind of tucked away there on the exhaust cam. Crank sensor lives by the harmonic balancer. Now on this side we have our power, ground, and the white wire is just the tack signal. And then this connector, 6 pins, that's going to be all the other wires. The EST, the bypass wire, the 4X signal, the 24X signal, and the cam signal going to the PCM. So these are all pull up by the module going to the PCM. Well, except for the bypass and the EST, which is pull up by the PCM going to the ICM. So pretty classic GM style setup here. Now let's see where to hook up the scope at the PCM. Alright, so got the scope hooked up, 3 channels. Channel 1, the purple and white wire, that's the 24X crank signal coming to the PCM from the ICM. Then channel 2 is our bypass wire, so when the PCM decides, hey, it's time for bypass mode, it sends 5 volts on there to the ICM. And channel 3 is the actual ignition timing control, the white wire that the PCM pulses to 5 volts going out to the ICM. So 3 channels right there. Run the right wires. Now let's take this car for a test drive. Alright, let's fire this bad boy up. Okay, so I have to check my scope ground because that didn't quite make sense. That, you know, we're starting at 0 and then that goes up to like 3 volts, that goes down, and then this goes also down. That's kind of weird. So this is exactly why you can't trust the scope ground ever. So I just put it on this nice metal stud going through the firewall, but apparently that stud is isolated by a rubber damper, so that's a bad ground. Okay. Now how about this? Nope. How about this right here? There you go. So this would be a good ground right here. You can see the old voltages now are at 0. That's up to 5 volts. That's 0. So let me find a good ground and then we'll take it on a test drive. Alright, so I'm just using one of the main computer grounds, black and white wire. All the scope lead grounds are tied to that. Turn the key on. That's better. Okay, now we can go for a test drive. That's key off, key on. Fire it up. Sweet. That's what I expect. 24X signal. Once I get up to speed, bypass goes high, and then the EST starts sending the timing signal to the ignition control module. So we have to drive it until the check engine light comes on and see if our signals do anything strange. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that V8 does sound pretty sweet. So far so good. But I'll tell you, this is one of my favorite parts of this job. It's a real nice perk. You get to cruise around in a classic old car on this beautiful day. It's pretty rewarding while playing with cool diagnostic tools. So I'm going to do the exact same test drive as I did yesterday, and after about 10 miles we saw that check engine light, so hopefully it'll warm up or whatever under the hood. It's kind of a cool day today, so I'm hoping it acts up, but so far it's glitch free and it drives butter smooth. Alright, here's the section of road where check engine light came on yesterday. I have a feeling it's not going to act up. Our scope data looks perfect. I mean, the only thing I touched, I did check the connectors at the ICM, just unplugged them, plugged them back in. Perhaps a little terminal fretting, but I don't know. And today's a cooler day, so it might need to be hotter outside to recreate this problem. Maybe the ICM, when it really heats up under the hood, does something weird. But I don't think it's going to act up today, unfortunately. But we'll charge up the AC and then take it on another spin. We'll see. Charging it up. 2 pounds. Alright, let's do a final leak check at the compressor seals under the car. Let's see here. Beautiful. No leaks. So that problem's definitely fixed. So we're taking the Allante for another cruise around the block, see if the check engine light comes on. I brought my wife along because she loves the 90s quirky exotic cars. What do you think of this one?
I don't think that's an accurate representation of the cars I like.
Would you drive it? Would you pay $60,000 for it in 1993?
If I had that much money, who knows what I would do with it?
Probably buy horses. Not cars. Yeah. Yeah.
Not a car.
Okay.
But I admire someone who would.
All right, that's the feedback from from my passenger. But yeah, I think we're just about done with this one. So we'll follow up on the check engine light and then ship it. Cadillac Allante, it's almost done. The last piece of the puzzle just got here from eBay. A brand new, well, used rear view mirror. Look, this thing is absolutely mint. All the liquid crystals are still happy. So let's install this vintage piece. It's 250 bucks, but I told the owner we're not doing aftermarket modifications on this exotic rare car. We're getting the OE piece. So let's pop it on, see how it works. Alright, the new mirror is installed. You can kind of see the difference. See how the original is a lot dimmer. Maybe the liquid crystals kind of leaked out or something. So that one's nice. So I'm wondering how this glare control works. If you're reading the owner's manual, the glare control, during the day the mirror reflects all the light. At night, when the glare is too high, it darkens to reflect only part of the light behind you. And there's this glare control slider switch from off, which is just day mode, and max is the maximum dimming. Reverse gear, if you put it in reverse, it'll change to just day mode. Okay. So I don't know if you have to put this thing in drive. So I have it set on max with the key on, and if you put light on the photo sensor, I don't really see a dimming effect. So I don't know, but hey, it's clear, you can see through it. I think that's all the owner wanted. So I think that should wrap it up. Just taking this thing on one more loop around the block, make sure the check engine light doesn't come on or flicker or anything. Mirror is looking really nice. So yeah, this was a fun one. Another quirky car from the 90s, computerized. So that's those are the toughest ones to diagnose. This one wasn't too bad. A lot of little things, obviously, that the owner wanted perfected. And it feels solid now, so hopefully it'll last him many more miles. I think he's taking it down to Florida where it belongs. And he's going to use it down there. So, yeah, pretty neat ride. So, appreciate everyone watching. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. A little bonus footage on the Cadillac Allante. Took it for a spin this morning, and I told the owner it's ready to pick up. Drove it to the post office and back, and I think we have a ghost. Hear that clicky clicky? What the heck is that? I don't see anything weird up here. No warning lights. But that's a little concerning. That relay, a relay in there is going nuts. I did see the display kind of dim and come back a little bit. So, not exactly sure what's going on, but let's open up this panel and see which relay is causing all this noise. Now, which relay is it? Sometimes you can tell just by feeling them. What is this dinging for? Oh, did you see that low oil pressure come on for a second there? Boom! Oh no, come on Cadillac. You just don't want to leave, huh? Let me figure out which relay it is. Oh, it's one of these. This one right here. Let's see what happens when we pull it out. What happens? Okay, so this is the culprit. Did anything turn off? Plug it back in. Alright, let's figure out which relay that is and go from there.